The betrayal was not subtle. My son's wife leaned close to him in the hallway, her voice sharp as a blade, and said, "Tomorrow we'll lock her away. She's becoming a burden." I froze where I stood, just around the corner, my body trembling as though the words had reached down into my chest and twisted my heart in two. The greedy motive hung in the air like smoke. I had given them everything, my pension checks, my savings, even sold off my late husband's old truck so they could pay their debts. And now, instead of gratitude, they plotted to lock me in some facility like a piece of luggage to be stored away. The shocking twist was that I had overheard them. They thought I was too old, too deaf, too blind to notice. But I understood every syllable, and at that moment I promised myself, they wouldn't win. They had no idea that tomorrow would bring not my silence, but my revenge. And before I take you into the thick of it, let me say this: subscribe, follow along, and tell me where you're watching from, because you won't believe how far this story goes. I pressed my back against the wall, my breath shallow, terrified they would hear the pounding of my heart. My son Michael lowered his voice, but I caught his words anyway. "It's the only way. If she stays here, she'll bleed us dry. The house should be ours. She'll sign it over if she's not thinking straight." His wife, Amber, gave a satisfied little laugh. "Exactly. The doctor already said she's forgetful. A few more notes in the right place, some papers, she won't even know what she's signing. By the time she realizes, it'll be too late." I bit down hard on my tongue to keep from gasping. Forgetful? They were turning my occasional lapses, misplacing my reading glasses, forgetting if I'd taken my pills in the morning, into a weapon against me. They planned to take my house, the very house my husband and I had built with decades of labor, love, and sacrifice. Memories came rushing back like a flood, long nights when my husband worked overtime at the factory and I stayed up sewing clothes to save money, years of saying no to vacations, new dresses, even proper furniture, so that one day Michael could go to college debt-free. Every dream I had put on hold was so he could have his. And here I was, 78 years old, standing in the shadows of my own hallway, listening to him plot my erasure. Amber's heels clicked against the wood as she walked past. I held myself perfectly still, praying she wouldn't glance around the corner. The front door shut behind them, and I finally let out the breath I had been holding. My knees gave way, and I sank to the floor, clutching at the wallpaper like it could keep me steady. I couldn't stay here. Not another night under this roof. If they were already whispering about tomorrow, then tonight was my only chance. I staggered into my small bedroom. It used to be Michael's old room, but now it was where they tucked me away like an unwanted guest. The quilt on the bed was one I had stitched 20 years ago. It seemed to mock me now with its faded patches of love. I opened the closet and reached for the small suitcase I had hidden on the top shelf. I had packed it months ago, not even knowing why. Maybe some part of me had always sensed this day would come. Inside were a few changes of clothes, my Bible, a photo of my husband in his uniform, and the last bank book I hadn't told anyone about. Just a few $1,000s I had managed to hide away after selling some of my jewelry. It wasn't much, but it was mine. My hands shook as I zipped the suitcase shut. My ears strained for every creak in the house. Michael and Amber were gone for the night, at least that's what I hoped, but I knew I couldn't waste time. The longer I stayed, the more danger I was in. I slipped on my old coat, slid the suitcase handle out, and crept toward the back door. Each step felt like I was walking on a minefield. The kitchen clock ticked too loudly, my shoes scuffed too harshly against the tile. When I reached the door, I hesitated, looking back at the silent house. My home. Or at least it had been. Now it felt like a trap. I unlocked the door, wincing at the metallic click, and eased it open. The night air rushed in, cool and sharp, filling my lungs with a freedom I hadn't felt in years. The moonlight spilled across the yard, illuminating the path to the gate. I pulled the suitcase after me, its little wheels crunching softly over the grass. As I reached the gate, a noise stopped me cold. The crunch of gravel. A car turning into the driveway. My blood froze. Had they come back already? I ducked behind the hedge, heart hammering so hard I feared it would give me away. Headlights swept across the yard, and the familiar sound of Michael's car engine rumbled to a stop. I crouched lower, clutching the suitcase tight against me. The car doors slammed. I heard Amber's laugh, sharp and shrill. "Let's just check she's asleep," she said. My stomach churned. If they came inside now, they would find my room empty, the closet bare. They would know I was gone. Michael's voice was closer now. She'll sign tomorrow. Don't worry. Old people are easy to handle. Especially when it's family. Amber giggled. And when we get the deed, we'll finally have money for the new house. This dump can be sold off. The words burned through me like acid. A dump. That's what she called my home, the home where Michael took his first steps, where I had nursed him through scarlet fever, where my husband and I had built every brick with our sweat. I pressed myself lower to the ground, praying the shadows would keep me hidden. My breath came in shallow gasps. I waited as their footsteps echoed up the porch steps, the creak of the front door opening, their voices fading into the house. This was my chance. My only chance. I scrambled to my feet, clutching the suitcase, and hurried down the street, my slippers slapping against the pavement. The night swallowed me whole, but I didn't care. All I knew was that I had to get away before they realized I was gone. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of eerie silence that makes you aware of every dog bark and every rustle of wind. I kept my head down, moving as fast as my legs could carry me. My mind spun with questions. Where could I go? Who could I trust? Names came to me in fragments. My neighbor, Mrs. Collins, who had once brought me soup when I was sick. My old friend Margaret, who lived across town. But more than anyone, my sister Diane in North Carolina. She had always told me, if you ever need me, call. I reached the corner and stopped under a flickering streetlight. My hands fumbled with the suitcase zipper until I found the small flip phone I had hidden. My fingers shook as I dialed Diane's number. The line rang twice before she picked up, her voice groggy with sleep. Hello? Diane, I whispered, my throat tight. It's me. I need help. She was instantly awake. What's wrong? Where are you? Tears pricked my eyes. I can't explain right now. Michael and Amber, they're planning something. I had to leave. Her voice sharpened with concern. Where are you, Eleanor? Tell me and I'll come. I looked around the dark street, the empty houses looming on either side. I'm on Maple and Fifth, near the old grocery store. Stay there. Don't move. I'll be on the next bus. Relief and terror tangled inside me. I hung up and hugged the suitcase close. The chill of the night seeped through my coat, but my fear kept me trembling. As I stood there, I heard something behind me, a soft click, like a camera shutter. I turned sharply, my eyes scanning the shadows. Nothing. Just the quiet hum of the streetlight. But the sound came again. This time closer. I swallowed hard, clutching my suitcase tighter, and began to walk faster. My eyes darted from shadow to shadow, every nerve screaming. Someone was there. Watching. I didn't know if it was Michael, Amber, or someone else entirely, but one thing was certain, my escape wasn't clean. Someone knew I was gone. And as I rounded the corner, my worst fear was confirmed. A dark figure stepped out from behind a tree, blocking my path. The figure blocking my path under the streetlight shifted his weight, the outline of broad shoulders and a hooded sweatshirt making him look menacing. My breath caught in my throat, but when he stepped closer, I saw his face. It was David, the plumber who had fixed my sink 2 weeks earlier. His eyes widened when he recognized me, standing there with a suitcase clutched to my chest. Mrs. Eleanor? What are you doing out here at this hour? I nearly cried with relief. David, I whispered, my voice shaking, please don't tell anyone you saw me. Not my son, not his wife. He frowned. What's going on? You look terrified. For a moment, I hesitated, but the words tumbled out. They're planning to put me away. To take my house, my money. I heard them tonight. His face hardened. That's not right. He looked over his shoulder, scanning the dark street. Come on, you can't just stand here. It's not safe. You need a place to stay. I gripped the handle of my suitcase tighter. I can't go back there. I can't. Then come with me, he said firmly. My place is small, but you'll be safe for the night. I didn't know what else to do. I followed him down 2 blocks to his modest home, a little white house with peeling paint and a porch light that flickered. Inside, it smelled faintly of wood polish and fried onions. He showed me to a worn couch in the living room. Rest here. We'll figure something out tomorrow. I sank down, my bones aching, but I couldn't relax. My ears strained for every sound outside, terrified Michael's car would pull up at any moment. David noticed my trembling hands. "Do you want me to call the police?" The word police lodged in my throat. "No," I said quickly. "They'll make me look crazy. They'll say I'm confused, that I can't make decisions anymore. They've already planted that seed." David sat on the chair across from me, shaking his head. "That's elder abuse. My aunt went through something like this. Her daughter tried to get her declared incompetent just to control her money. It's disgusting." His words stabbed through me. Declared incompetent. That's what Amber had hinted at when she told Michael I was forgetful. My blood chilled. They weren't just planning to lock me away, they wanted to strip me of my rights entirely. I barely slept that night, my mind looping with memories of Michael as a boy. The little boy who used to run to me with scraped knees, who begged for one more bedtime story, who clung to me when thunder shook the house. How had that boy grown into a man who plotted to steal from me, to erase me? At dawn, I thanked David and promised I'd be safe. "Don't go back there," he warned. "Whatever you do, don't sign anything." I nodded. His words echoed in my chest as I made my way to the bus stop with my suitcase. My sister Diane would take me in, but she was hours away. In the meantime, I needed to protect myself. At the bus station, I bought a ticket under cash to avoid any trace on my bank card. While waiting, I ducked into the restroom and pulled out the envelope Michael had left on my nightstand earlier that week. I had stuffed it into my coat pocket without opening it. Now, under the harsh fluorescent lights, I tore it open. Inside was a thick legal document, pages and pages of typed words. My eyes scanned the first page, and my stomach turned. Power of attorney. The papers gave Michael full control over my finances, my medical decisions, even my property. And at the bottom, there was a signature line with my name already typed neatly above it. I nearly dropped it into the trash, but something stopped me. No, I thought. This is proof. This is what they're trying to do. The bus ride to Diane's felt endless. Every mile took me further from Michael's house, but deeper into the reality of what was happening. When I finally arrived, Diane was waiting for me at the station, her arms wide open. She was 2 years younger than me, her hair dyed blonde, her eyes sharp with the kind of wisdom that comes from surviving her own heartbreaks. She hugged me tight. "Eleanor, what have they done to you?" I broke down right there on the platform, sobbing into her shoulder. Between gasps, I told her everything, the whispers in the hallway, the plan to lock me away, the power of attorney papers. Diane's face grew darker with every word. "Over my dead body," she said fiercely. That night in her cozy living room, surrounded by the smell of lavender candles and the soft ticking of her grandfather clock, Diane spread the papers on the table. "This is serious," she said. "They're going to try to declare you incompetent. Once that happens, you'll lose everything." Her words hit me like a hammer. "How can they do that? I'm not incompetent. They'll get doctors to say you are. They'll twist your forgetfulness into proof. They'll bring lawyers. If you don't fight back, they'll win." I stared at the documents, bile rising in my throat. I gave them everything. Why isn't it enough? "Because for people like them, it never will be," Diane said grimly. "We need a lawyer. Someone who knows how to deal with this kind of abuse." The next morning, Diane took me downtown to meet an attorney named Mr. Hayes. He was in his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair and a no-nonsense expression. After hearing my story, he tapped his pen against his notepad. "This is a textbook case of financial exploitation," he said. "If they've already drawn up a power of attorney, I guarantee they're planning a competency petition next. We need to get ahead of them." I felt like I was drowning. "What can we do?" "First," he said, "don't sign anything. Second, we'll draft a legal document stating you are of sound mind, backed by a doctor's evaluation. Third, we'll prepare for the possibility that they'll try to smear you in court." My hands trembled as I clutched the edge of the table. "They'll drag me into court? My own son?" Mr. Hayes looked me square in the eye. "Yes. And you have to be ready to fight." Over the next week, I stayed with Diane. For the first time in months, I felt safe, though the fear never left my chest completely. Michael called every day, his messages shifting from sweetly pleading to angrily demanding. Mom, you're confused. Come home. We'll help you. Then, Mom, you're making a mistake. Amber's worried sick. And finally, if you don't come back, you'll regret it. I didn't answer any of them. One afternoon, as Diane and I returned from grocery shopping, a sleek black car was parked outside her house. My stomach dropped when I saw who stepped out: Amber, dressed in a tailored coat, her lips painted a bold red. She smiled like a snake as she approached. "Eleanor," she purred. "There you are. We've been so worried." Diane stepped in front of me, her arms crossed. "You're not welcome here." Amber's smile didn't falter. "This is family business. Eleanor, you're confused. Michael just wants what's best for you. Come home, and we'll sort this out." I found my voice, though it shook. "What's best for me? Or what's best for you?" Her eyes flashed. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. You're not thinking clearly. Everyone sees it. Sign the papers, and everything will be easier." Diane snapped, "She's not signing anything." Amber's mask cracked, just for a second, revealing the venom underneath. "Then you leave us no choice." She turned sharply, her heels clicking against the pavement as she slid back into the car. I stood there on the porch, my knees weak, my heart pounding. What did she mean by no choice? I whispered. Diane's face was grim. "It means they're going to court." And she was right. 2 days later, a man in a suit delivered an official notice. My son and his wife had filed a petition to have me declared legally incompetent, requesting guardianship over my estate. The hearing was set for 3 weeks from now. The humiliation of it crushed me. To be dragged into court by my own flesh and blood, to have strangers question my sanity, my worth, my independence, it was a nightmare. Diane tried to soothe me, but that night, as I lay awake in her guest room, I felt the walls closing in. I couldn't stop hearing Amber's whisper in my ear, "Tomorrow we'll lock her away." But I wasn't the same woman I had been then. Something inside me had shifted. I was no longer just running. I was preparing. The next morning, I walked into Mr. Hayes's office with my shoulders squared. "Tell me what I need to do," I said. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "We're going to build a case. Gather every shred of evidence that shows you're of sound mind. And if they want a war, we'll give them one." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of power. But power came with risk. Because as I walked out of that office, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an unknown number. The text read, "You can't hide forever. We know where you are." The message on my phone burned into my eyes as though the words had been carved into my skin. "You can't hide forever. We know where you are." For a long moment, I just sat frozen, the phone trembling in my hands. I looked over at Diane, who was pouring tea in the kitchen, and I didn't have the heart to tell her immediately. My sister had already taken on so much of my fear, shielding me with her sharp tongue and fierce loyalty. But I knew if I kept secrets, I would only be falling into the same pattern that had trapped me in Michael's house for so long: silent endurance, hoping things would get better on their own. They never did. So I carried the phone into the kitchen and showed her the screen. She read the message once, her lips pressing into a thin line. Then she set the phone on the table and said, "They're rattled." "That's good." "Good," I whispered. "They're threatening me." Diane's eyes locked onto mine, fierce and steady. "That means they know you're not as easy to control as you used to be. Fear is their weapon. If they're playing this card, they're desperate." Her words gave me a strange kind of strength. For the first time, I realized I wasn't powerless. My running had cornered them. My silence had made them nervous. And maybe, just maybe, I could turn that fear back on them. Mr. Hayes called the next morning with instructions. "We need to start building evidence immediately," he said. "Every text, every voicemail, every document they've pushed on you. We'll get a full psychological evaluation to prove your competence. And I'll be filing a counterclaim, elder abuse and financial exploitation." The words made my chest swell with both dread and hope. Abuse. Exploitation. Finally, someone was naming what I had lived through. That afternoon, Diane and I drove back to my house, the place Michael and Amber now claimed as theirs. The driveway was empty, their car gone, but I felt a chill as I unlocked the door. It no longer felt like home. It felt invaded, polluted with whispers and plans to erase me. Still, I forced myself inside. We went straight to my study, where I had kept years of records, bank statements, bills, receipts. Diane and I pulled out every file, spreading them across the desk. "This is your shield," she said. "Every check you wrote, every dollar they demanded, every signature they tried to force, this is proof of who you are and what they've done." I found a folder stuffed with receipts from the past 3 years, thousands for emergency repairs Michael had insisted on, even though nothing had been broken. Checks for Amber's medical bills, even though she was on her employer's insurance. Transfers marked family loan, though nothing had ever been repaid. Each paper was a knife, cutting open old wounds, but it was also armor. For the first time, I wasn't just enduring the pain, I was arming myself with it. Diane glanced at me, her brow furrowed. "Do you still have that notebook you used to keep? The one where you wrote down what they asked you for every month?" I gasped softly. Yes, I think it's in the bottom drawer." Sure enough, buried under old birthday cards and letters, was a worn leather notebook. Inside were pages and pages of my careful handwriting, each entry dated. March 4th, Michael asked for $500 for rent. April 10th, Amber needed $800 for dental work. May 15th, Michael insisted I co-sign a loan. I had kept it all, thinking one day it might matter. Now, it mattered more than I ever could have imagined. As we packed the evidence into a box, Diane's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and hissed, "It's Michael." "Don't answer," I whispered. She silenced the call, but within seconds, her phone buzzed again with a text. "If you keep hiding her, Diane, you'll regret it. She belongs with family." Diane held the phone up, her jaw tight. "They're trying to intimidate me now. That just proves we're on the right track." That night, Mr. Hayes arranged for a doctor's visit. Dr. Moore, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes but a kind smile, arrived at Diane's house with a folder of tests. For 2 hours, she asked me questions, gave me puzzles to solve, even had me calculate numbers aloud. At first, I was nervous, but as the questions rolled on, I realized how clear my mind still was. At the end, Dr. Moore closed her folder. "Mrs. Evans, you're sharper than half the 40-year-olds I know. I'll be writing a full report confirming your competence. They don't stand a chance." Her words nearly brought me to tears. It was validation I didn't know I needed. But Michael and Amber weren't sitting idle. The very next day, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Inside were glossy photographs, me walking down the street clutching my suitcase, me sitting on Diane's porch, me entering Mr. Hayes's office. Each photo had a note scrawled across the back: paranoid behavior. Evidence of decline. I dropped them on the table, shaking. Diane cursed under her breath. "They've hired someone to follow you. They're building a case." My knees nearly buckled. "They're twisting everything. They'll use these pictures to say I'm unstable." "Which is why we'll use them to show stalking," Diane shot back. "Eleanor, every move they make can be turned against them. They don't see it yet, but they're digging their own grave." Still, the pressure grew heavier with each passing day. Amber called Diane's landline one evening, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Diane, you're enabling her delusions. She's not well. If you don't stop interfering, you'll lose her forever. Do you want that on your conscience?" Diane slammed the phone down. That woman could poison a well with her words. The humiliation was the worst part. Friends from church started calling, gently asking if I was feeling all right, their voices tinged with pity. Someone had been spreading lies about me. I overheard 2 women whispering outside the grocery store, "Poor Eleanor. She's not herself anymore. It's so sad when the mind goes." I wanted to scream, to shout that I was fine, that I was clearer than ever. But I swallowed it, saving the rage for court. Through it all, Mr. Hayes pushed me harder. "Document everything. Record every call, every message. Build a wall of truth so high they can't climb over it." So I began writing down every interaction, every word Michael and Amber said in their voicemails. One in particular seared into me, Michael's voice, low and cold. "Mom, if you keep fighting us, you'll end up alone. Is that what you want? To die alone?" For hours after I heard it, I sat in silence, staring at the wall. My own son, using death as a threat. The boy I had once held against my chest during thunderstorms, who had whispered, "Don't leave me, Mom." Now he was the storm. But storms can be weathered. I began to plan. With Diane and Mr. Hayes at my side, we mapped out every possible angle. Witnesses from church who knew my character. Bankers who had watched me carefully manage my accounts for years. Neighbors who had seen Michael and Amber come and go, demanding money, raising their voices. We prepared like generals for battle, every piece of evidence another weapon. Still, I couldn't shake the fear that they were one step ahead. That's when David, the plumber who had sheltered me that first night, came back into the picture. He stopped by Diane's house with a look of urgency. "Mrs. Evans," he said, "I think you need to know something." He pulled out his phone and showed me a video. Grainy but clear enough, Michael standing in his driveway, talking to a man I didn't recognize. "She'll crack soon," Michael was saying. "We've got the papers, we've got the witnesses. By the time the judge sees her, she'll look insane." The other man chuckled. "And once you've got control, it's smooth sailing." Amber's voice chimed in from the background. "She won't know what hit her." My stomach twisted. Proof. Actual proof of their plot. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. David looked uneasy. "They didn't know I was working on the neighbor's pipes. I heard them talking, so I hit record." Diane's eyes widened. "This is it. This changes everything." I clutched the phone, my hands shaking. For weeks, I had been drowning in fear, crushed by lies. Now, for the first time, I had something solid. Evidence that could tear their whole scheme apart. But even as hope surged in me, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail from Michael, his tone colder than ice. "Mom, stop what you're doing. If you go to court with this, you won't survive it. Remember, accidents happen. Consider this your last warning." My knees buckled, and Diane had to steady me. The room spun. He wasn't just threatening me financially anymore. He was threatening my life. And suddenly, I realized this battle was far more dangerous than I had imagined. The day of the hearing arrived heavy with dread. I barely slept the night before, lying awake in Diane's guest room, staring at the ceiling while Michael's last voicemail echoed in my ears. "Accidents happen. Consider this your last warning. My own son." The boy whose tiny hand had once clung to mine on his first day of school now used threats sharper than knives to try and break me. Diane drove me to the courthouse that morning, her jaw set tight, her hands gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles whitened. "You're going to walk in there with your head high," she told me. "Don't let them see fear. They're counting on you to be weak. Don't give them that satisfaction." The courthouse loomed in front of us, gray stone and cold windows, like a fortress built for battles not with weapons, but with words and lies. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper and disinfectant. I spotted Michael and Amber at the far end of the hallway, surrounded by two lawyers in sleek suits. Amber wore a cream-colored blazer, her hair pinned in a perfect twist, her face painted with a look of mock concern. Michael looked polished too, dark suit, polished shoes, but his eyes betrayed him. There was a flicker of nerves behind the smug smile he flashed when he saw me. Amber's lips curved upward, just barely, and she leaned in to whisper something to Michael. He chuckled softly, as if they had already won. Mr. Hayes arrived a few minutes later, files tucked under his arm. His presence steadied me. "We've got this," he said firmly, his voice like iron. "Remember, tell the truth. Let their lies trap them." The bailiff called us in. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined, but every seat was filled. Neighbors, church members, even a few of Diane's friends had come, curious to see the drama unfolding. My stomach twisted at the thought of my humiliation being so public, but Mr. Hayes had warned me, exposure is their enemy. The more people hear the truth, the stronger we are. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and piercing eyes, entered. We all rose, then sat again. The hearing began. Michael's lawyer stood first. He had a smooth voice, the kind of practiced tone designed to sound reasonable while dripping poison. "Your Honor," he began, "we are here because Mrs. Eleanor Evans, though beloved by her family, has unfortunately demonstrated signs of mental decline. My client, her son Michael, seeks guardianship only to protect her well-being and ensure her assets are managed responsibly." Amber sat beside Michael, her hands folded neatly in her lap, nodding along with a look of false sympathy. The lawyer continued, "Evidence will show Mrs. Evans has been acting irrationally, wandering at night, making paranoid accusations, even fleeing her home without explanation. We believe she is vulnerable to manipulation and cannot properly care for herself." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I clenched my fists, my face burning with shame. They were twisting everything, turning my desperation into madness. Mr. Hayes rose slowly, straightening his tie. "Your Honor, what you just heard is not the truth. It is a carefully crafted story meant to strip a capable woman of her freedom. We will show that Mrs. Evans is of sound mind, that she has been the victim of financial exploitation, and that this petition is nothing more than a greedy attempt to seize control of her estate." The judge nodded, expression unreadable. "Proceed." The first witness Michael's side called was Amber. She walked confidently to the stand, her heels clicking on the wooden floor. She raised her hand, swore the oath, then turned to face the courtroom with her eyes wide, as if she were a martyr sacrificing herself for the sake of honesty. "Amber," the lawyer began, "how would you describe your relationship with your mother-in-law?" Amber clasped her hands and sighed softly. "I've always tried to be kind, Your Honor. But Eleanor, she's been struggling. She forgets things. She gets confused. Just last month, she left the stove on overnight. We were so afraid something terrible would happen." I gasped aloud. "That's a lie." The judge raised her hand. "Mrs. Evans, you will remain silent until it is your turn." Amber's lips twitched with satisfaction before she continued. "She also accused me of plotting against her. I know she's scared, but it's heartbreaking to watch her paranoia get worse. Michael and I just want to help her. That's all." Tears welled in her eyes, crocodile tears, falling on cue. Michael's lawyer nodded gravely. "Thank you, Amber. No further questions." Mr. Hayes rose. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, his tone sharp enough to cut glass, "you claim Eleanor forgets things. Can you provide any medical documentation to support this?" Amber hesitated. "Well, no, but do you also claim she's paranoid? Yet isn't it true that you and your husband presented her with a power of attorney document last month?" Amber's face paled. "That was just a precaution." "A precaution," Hayes repeated. "A precaution that would have given you complete control over her finances, her property, and her medical care. That doesn't sound like concern. That sounds like exploitation." Amber's mask cracked. "We were only trying to." "Trying to what?" "Secure her assets for yourselves." The judge's eyes narrowed. Amber squirmed in her seat, but Hayes waved her off and returned to his table. Next, Michael took the stand. His lawyer guided him with gentle questions, painting him as the devoted son. "I grew up watching my mom struggle," he said, his voice soft, almost trembling. "I only want to make sure she's safe. I can't stand the thought of her being alone." For a moment, I almost believed him. He sounded so much like the boy I used to know, the one who had once clung to me in fear of thunderstorms. But then I remembered his voicemail. Accidents happen. The sweetness was poison. Mr. Hayes stepped forward. "Michael, isn't it true that you asked your mother for thousands of dollars over the past 3 years?" Michael's jaw tightened. "She wanted to help us." "Wanted to? Or pressured into it?" "We have receipts, bank statements, and a ledger in her own handwriting documenting every demand you made." Michael's eyes flickered with panic, but he tried to recover. "She offered. I never forced her." "Offered," Hayes repeated. "Yet in your voicemail last week you told her, and I quote, 'If you keep fighting us, you'll end up alone. Accidents happen.'" Hayes played the recording on his phone. Michael's own voice filled the room, cold and threatening. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Michael's face drained of color. That's taken out of context." "No," Hayes cut him off. "That is your voice. That is not the voice of a loving son. That is the voice of a man trying to intimidate his mother into silence." The judge's expression hardened. "Mr. Evans, do you deny making that statement?" Michael stammered, his words collapsing in on themselves. Then Hayes made his final move. "Your Honor, before we call our next witness, I'd like to submit video evidence." He signaled to David, who sat nervously in the back row. David walked to the front, handing over his phone. The screen lit up, showing the grainy recording he had captured, Michael and Amber in their driveway, laughing about their plan. "She'll crack soon. We've got the papers, we've got the witnesses. By the time the judge sees her, she'll look insane." Amber's voice chimed in, smug and venomous. "She won't know what hit her." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge banged her gavel. "Order! Order!" She turned to Michael and Amber, her eyes sharp as knives. "Do you have an explanation for this?" Amber's face twisted, her mask shattering. "She's lying. She set us up." Michael slammed his hand on the stand. "That recording is illegal. It doesn't prove anything." But their voices were desperate now, frantic. The calm veneer had cracked wide open, exposing the greed beneath. The judge leaned forward. "It proves enough. This hearing is no longer about your petition. It is about whether Mrs. Evans has been the victim of elder abuse. And I assure you, I will be investigating this thoroughly." Amber's eyes darted around the courtroom, searching for sympathy, but all she found were cold stares. Michael slumped in his chair, his face pale, his hands trembling. For the first time, the weight shifted. I wasn't the one on trial anymore, they were. But as the gavel struck, signaling the recess, a chill crept over me. Because Amber leaned toward me as she passed, her voice low, her breath hot against my ear. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You think you've won? We still have friends. And when we're done, you'll wish you'd let us lock you away." Her words slithered into my chest, chilling the victory I had just felt. Because I realized, cornered animals are the most dangerous of all. That night, after the recess, the hearing stretched long into evening. The courthouse lights cast everything in a tired golden glow, but my heart was beating with a kind of restless fire I hadn't felt in years. The judge reconvened, her tone clipped, efficient, as if the lies of Michael and Amber had soured her patience. Mr. Hayes wasted no time. He called our final witnesses, my neighbor Diane, who told the court what she'd heard through the thin walls of my home the night Amber whispered about locking me away, and David, who reluctantly but bravely explained how he recorded their cruel boasts on his phone. His voice cracked with nerves, but his truth was steady. Amber tried to cross-examine him herself when her lawyer looked too rattled. She leaned forward, eyes glittering like broken glass. "David, you misunderstood. We were joking. Just a private conversation taken out of context. Isn't it true you barely even know us?" David shifted, but before he could answer, Hayes stood. "Your Honor, intent is clear in tone. These weren't jokes. These were conspiratorial statements about deceiving this very court." The judge nodded. "The witness may step down." When it was my turn to testify, my hands trembled as I placed them on the worn wood of the witness stand. My voice shook at first, but then I steadied it. "I raised Michael alone after his father passed," I began, letting my eyes sweep across the room. "I worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. I gave him everything I could, opportunity, love, sacrifice. And now he sits here trying to take the only thing I have left, my freedom." The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence where even breath feels too loud. Amber told me to my face they would lock me away. Michael threatened me. They pushed papers at me that would have signed away my house, my accounts, my dignity. But I am not weak. I am not confused. I remember every word. And today, for the first time, I am saying enough. I swallowed the lump in my throat, my eyes landing on Michael. For a heartbeat, I saw not the man he'd become but the boy he once was, the child who built forts in the living room and cried when he scraped his knee. And then I saw the smug, threatening man who left those voicemails. My voice hardened. They didn't want to protect me. They wanted to profit from me. Hayes's closing arguments tied everything together like a noose. "This is not guardianship," he said, his voice ringing clear. "This is elder abuse. A son and his wife seeking to cage the very woman who gave him life, for the sake of greed. The evidence is overwhelming. The threats, the recordings, the lies, they condemn themselves." Michael's lawyer sputtered objections, claiming fabrication, insisting Eleanor was vindictive, but it was too late. The scales had shifted. The judge's expression had been carved in stone long before he finished. At last, after hours of testimony and rebuttal, the judge delivered her verdict. Her voice was firm, final. This court finds no evidence that Mrs. Eleanor Evans is incapable of managing her own affairs. The petition for guardianship is denied in full. Furthermore, given the evidence of coercion, intimidation, and potential fraud, this court recommends the district attorney review this matter for possible criminal charges against Michael Evans and Amber Evans. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Michael's shoulders slumped, his hands covering his face. Amber's mouth fell open in outrage, her sharp voice cutting through the air. "You can't do this. We're family." The judge banged the gavel. "Order. One more outburst, and you will be removed." Amber sank back into her chair, seething, but the power was gone. When it ended, when the gavel struck the last time, I stood slowly. Diane squeezed my hand from the row behind, her eyes shining with tears. David gave me a small, nervous nod, as if proud to have helped. Hayes simply gathered his papers with the quiet satisfaction of a man who knew justice had been served. As I walked past Michael, he lifted his head. His eyes were red, his face streaked with shame, but still his mouth twisted into a sneer. "You think you've won? You'll die alone, Mom." The words pierced, but they no longer broke me. I leaned down, my voice soft but unshaking. "Better alone in dignity than caged in betrayal." Amber hissed something under her breath, but the bailiff was already escorting them out. For the first time in months, I felt the weight on my chest begin to lift. Outside, the cool night air wrapped around me like a balm. The courthouse steps stretched out beneath the glow of the street lamps, and people I barely knew came up to touch my arm, to whisper, "Good for you. You were brave." Brave. The word felt foreign. I hadn't felt brave when I ran from my son's house barefoot into the night. I hadn't felt brave when I sat shaking in Diane's kitchen. But now, standing in the aftermath, I realized bravery isn't about never being afraid. It's about moving forward even when fear threatens to choke you. Over the next weeks, the fallout was swift. Michael lost his job at the bank when the recordings and court documents made their way through town gossip and into the hands of his employers. Amber's family, once so proud of her, distanced themselves when whispers of criminal charges began circling. They stopped returning her calls, leaving her adrift. Meanwhile, I changed the locks on my house. Hayes helped me set up protections so no one could ever file another guardianship claim against me without medical proof. Diane insisted on walking with me to church every Sunday, as if daring anyone to whisper against me again. But the real healing came slower. Nights were still hard. I'd wake at 3 a.m., the echo of Amber's hiss in my ear, "Tomorrow we'll lock her away." I'd pad into the kitchen, make tea, sit at the table staring at the moonlight on the floor. And each time, I reminded myself, they failed. I am free. One afternoon, I visited Robert's grave, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers. The cemetery was quiet, only the sound of birds rustling in the trees. I knelt and laid the flowers gently on the stone, brushing away a stray leaf. "We did it, Robert," I whispered. "They tried to take everything from me. But I fought back. I wish you could have been here to see it." The breeze stirred, cool against my cheek, and for the first time in years, I felt him near. Not in body, but in the strength he had always given me. Weeks later, Diane hosted a small dinner with a few close neighbors. We sat around her table, eating roast chicken and laughing about little things. For the first time, I wasn't watching every shadow, waiting for betrayal. I laughed too, my chest lighter, my smile no longer forced. As the night drew to a close, I walked home under a sky filled with stars. I stood on my porch, looking up, the air cool and clean. I thought about Michael, about the boy I had raised and the man he had become. The grief of losing him, the true him, would always ache. But grief was better than chains. And I realized something then: the true betrayal hadn't been the attempt to steal my house or my money. It had been the attempt to erase me, to silence me, to make me small. But I wasn't small. I had survived storms before, and I would again. I turned the key in the new lock, stepped inside my safe, quiet house, and whispered aloud, "No one will ever lock me away again." And to you listening now, if you've ever been betrayed by the very ones you love, if you've ever been told you're too weak, too old, too broken, remember this. Dignity is not something anyone can give or take. It is yours. Hold on to it with both hands, even when the world tries to rip it away. Because sometimes the people closest to you will be the ones who try to cage you. And sometimes, the only way to win is to walk free, even if you walk alone.